I wrote a book called The Unselfish Spirit. It's been an emotional journey for me, that book, because I wrote it after many years. I lived in a Buddhist monastery, used to be in the infantry, believe it or not. Last week I had hair down there, daughter's wedding. I was a good dad. So basically I wrote that book after I'd had a spiritual crisis, and I realised that that crisis was about a disconnection. And actually, what I found, living in this Buddhist monastery, going through a transpersonal crisis all those years ago, is that actually I needed to connect. And part of that became connected to the world, to others, and to the heart, and what have you. So I'm delighted to be here today, and thank you for inviting me. It's a real honour and privilege. You talk about the title of the conference, the environment, empowerment, and education. Those are such key words, because the environment is everything at the moment. You know, the global crisis is a spiritual crisis. There's no doubt about that. We need to be empowered to do something, and it's a verb. You know, we've got to, what's the verbs of verbing? I think was one that Buckminster Fuller said, the verbs of verbing. So there's something beautiful about that. We've really got to get into action. And Stuart was just talking about that. We've got to do something. And education. I mean, I'm an educationalist. Educado, to draw out. So if we're thinking about the environment and empowering and drawing out what really is inside of us, which is incredible. And I've just got a whole pile of goosebumps. So did anyone else, or was it just me? God, I love myself so much. Look at that, what an egomaniac, you know? Yeah, I really, thank you, I was so moved by what I just said. Nobody else was. So anyway, not only can I do a pretzel, I'm an egomaniac, you know, for God's sake, this is too much. Anyway, so I want to try and get behind this idea that we're amazing and we've got so much to draw out. Education is not about filling us up, it's about bringing out. And so what do we need to bring out? Well, we're already part of the whole. Advaya, as we've already heard, is about one, is about non-duality. Yoga is about binding together. That's not just an individual bind. My question is, how can we bind together and co-create a future for ourselves and future generations, other species, and nature as a whole? That seems to me to be the proposition that we need to be getting on with. We need to get turned on and really get into that. Timothy Leary, wherever you are, great words. Tune in, turn on. Don't necessarily drop out, unless you need to drop out of something that isn't working for the benefit of all. So, here's one way we can turn on. And this is a lovely little meditation. Anyone heard of Brian Swine? Yes. Brilliant. What a guy. Cosmologist. If you haven't had a look at Brian Swine's work, have a read. He did a commentary on Hubble's discovery that the universe is continually expanding. There's something magical about that, because the universe is expanding. And what are we, just part of that, thinking, oh, where's it going? We're part of that expanse. And Swine did a beautiful analogy. He said, imagine a raisin loaf being baked in an oven, and the raisins are separating away from each other. But here's the beautiful thing that Hubble discovered. We're all the center of the universe. But hang on a minute, there's lots of raisins, but they're all central to their position in the universe. Now that is a wonderful proposition, because it means, and this is the thing I like saying, if you find someone bitching about someone else saying, God, they think they're the centre of the universe. Well, they are actually, but so are you. And so let's celebrate being the centre of the universe. But here's the beautiful thing. If you think that any act of consciousness that you're in, where your perceptions and your ability to cognize in that moment, you are at that moment part of the universe's expanse. Now just hold that for a second, because that to me is a bit of a mind twist. But it's a beautiful one, because it means you are connected, you are part of that one, you're part of that expanse. That moment of seeing, hearing, feeling, touch, expanse in that moment. We're not separate from that universal growth, that universal unfolding is another way of looking at it. And so what it takes us to is a position that we've got this ego self, and there's a lot of transpersonalists and spiritual people that are, oh, you know, let's kill the ego. Sorry, no. I worked in psychiatry for many years as a therapist. Trust me, you need an ego, okay? A safe, solid ego that can manage the world. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not the whole story, and maybe that's the issue. There's something called the transpersonal, and you'll find it in yoga. The self with a capital S, it's a big S. Self meaning part of that universe that we belong to. We're not separate from it, and our egos don't need to try and find a way around it. It's about relinquishing the dominance of the ego and allowing the self to come home. That's really what the journey's about. That's what my book's about, that's what I've been writing about and studying since the 70s. After I left the infantry, I had short back and sides when I had long hair. When I grew long hair, everyone went short. So, you know, I was always out of step, but, you know, I was on my own path. But great. So the question is then, yoga is about binding together. But it's not only your own trip, it's about binding together in this time of global crisis. How can we do something together? Co-create, collectivity. This seems to be the question of the times. Well, one of the things is we have technologies of transcendence. Yoga being one of them, shamanism being another, Jungian psychology, Christianity, religion, you name it. There's lots of contemplative prayer, Buddhist practice. There's so many technologies of transcendence. You know, we don't just have to belong to one religion or one practice. There's many ways we can engage these technologies of transcendence. And they're important. And, you know, they're ways that we can start to connect to that expanse that I just spoke about. So think, when you are connected to the universe, the way you're looking at the world, you're part of that universe's expansion. You are an ego self and a transpersonal self. There's a beautiful blend within each of us. So let's have a look then. The ecological crisis is a spiritual crisis, because if the earth is depleting, the water levels around the world are going down, we're farming intensively, as Stuart said, in terms of meat, and that is not good for increasing carbon in the atmosphere, so we've really got to do something. The global crisis is a spiritual crisis because we've been treating the earth with contempt. And we've got to start thinking differently about that. We've got to think about the earth as mother, as sacred, as sacrament. And what we do on it and with it and together is itself sacramental. There's something very spiritual. So these technologies of transcendence are really important to us to grow. Two that we can think of, Heinrich Skolimowski is a philosopher that I like, and he's done a bit of a commentary on eco-yoga, and that idea that the spiritual practice is about aligning ourselves to our global predicament. I think that's already an interesting position. So you don't have to be a yoga practitioner in the asana sense, but just to know that how you align spiritually can align globally with what's going on. Eco-yoga. And then there's karma yoga. Now, I'm not a yoga practitioner, but I do like reading. And, you know, if we think about karma yoga, selfless action, well, it's not a complete abandonment of the self. We still need to function with our ego self, but there is self-development within that to a capital S, a more transpersonal self. And so, I know in yoga they talk about self-realization. And, you know, in a way it's about trying to get off the path of cyclic existence, cause and effect suffering. But at this time, it's about us maybe drawing together and doing something really incredible together. So maybe relinquishing, like the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicitta path, relinquishing our own enlightenment at the moment and working together for the benefit of the all and future generations. Could be an interesting way to go. So it leads me on to doing. Now, I talked about technologies of transcendence. But if we look at doing, now I'm an occupational therapist and I teach occupational science. So this is one of my real passions now. I suppose if you want, this is my yoga, if you wish. And so what I love about doing, it's fascinating because people say things like, oh, you know, you shouldn't say you're a human being, you're a human being. Well, I think the other way around. I'm a human being. Because evolution happened through doing. Some of the most incredible breakthroughs with tools and technologies happen through trial and error and experimentation. And when those changes happened, it changed the way we lived. You can see that from Australopithecus afarensis, when they stood up on two legs and were bipedal and went, whoa! And they started doing things with their fingers. They started to not forage so much, they're getting bigger brains, started getting tools, Homo habilis. the toolmaker. And then they got really a bit sort of sassy and thought, let's migrate. So you had Homo erectus, who stood up and had massive, great big quadriceps, a bit like mine, and did these massive migrations with their tools and started to adapt and live in different climates. Then you had the agricultural revolution, what, about 11,000 years ago, around Mesopotamia and Jericho. Wonderful, because then agriculture happened. Now that could be the cause of some of our problems, but maybe it's the way we've done it, not so much that we have agriculture per se. We've had the Industrial Revolution, and now we're in the Information Revolution. Here's a question to you. What's the next revolution? What's going to happen next? Yeah? It's a really good question. And what, damn, I'm not using this much, but it feels like a comfort blanket. I'm just a bit worried that I might just dry up, so I need something. So what is the next step? What's the next revolution that's going to happen? You know, we're in this information age, and is that it? Is Google it? I don't know. No, obviously not. But there's something maybe about, sorry Google, there are other options as well, other companies do exist. But it's about maybe co-creating and co-evolving a new way of doing. So one thing I really love about doing is that it's evolutionary, and it's about how we evolve and adapt, and adaptation's a massive part of what we're about today. So, techne to bio, the craft of life. That is what they used to say in ancient Greece. Techne to bio, the craft of life. That's another technology. Ally what you do to a technology of transcendence, and I'm having another goosebump moment. Funny enough, it's only on the right side this time. That's the side of the spirit, isn't it? On the right? Okay, I'm getting spiritual feedback through goosebumps. I love it. But there's another story to this. Doing is phenomenal. It's an incredible thing when you actually start to do with awareness and knowing that you're part of this expansive universe. But here's the real magic. What we've also evolved over many, many countless millennia is an archetypal sort of human heritage, a human legacy. Together, we're part of a shared collective unconscious. Anyone else had a dream of someone and that person's phone within minutes or turned up on the door the next day? There's going to be people nodding their heads because it happens. You have synchronicities where you're doing something and you think, oh crumbs, I just wish so-and-so would turn up, and they turn up. And they said, I don't know why, I should have gone left, but I felt I needed to go right. We're not so disconnected. So not only are we part of this expansive universe, we're made of carbons, atoms, hydrogen, but we're also connected at psyche level as well. So this is a fascinating position. Because when we look at the archetypes, there's an archetype of doing, because Jung said these are systems of readiness for action. Now, if that doesn't get you goosebumping, you're verbing, then I don't know what will, because the archetypes within you are this incredible heritage that your forebears, our ancestors, have cultivated together. And here we are, with the ability to tap into them. It means what we do when I cut bread with my knife goes back millions of years when one of my ancestors had a flint chopper and cut something. When I perform that action, it's archetypal. All right? Don't think the archetypes are just dreams and figures and feelings and resonances. They're also absolutely visceral. They're in you and they come out when you're acting. If you get that, it transforms what you do at any time in your life. This is I feel like I'm going to get up now and say, and I've seen the other side. But anyway, I'm going to resist that urge because I can just feel myself going that way and I think, oh dear, I'm going to start frothing at the mouth in a minute. So I'm going to rewind and just hold it together. But you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things, when you're passionate about something, you want to share it, you say, come on, let's dig deep. This is digging deep, right? Doing is deep. It's archetypal, it's in you, it's in every action you perform. They're not unique, they've been going on for years. The only unique bit is our technologies are evolving interesting ways, so we are evolutionary doers as well. So we're not just going to hang back to the past, we've got to evolve the future. So how are we going to do it? Those are the questions. How are the verbs going to verb? That's what we've got to think about. So, think about the archetypes as systems of readiness for action. think about today what 3 asanas that we've done today. And I'm no yoga practitioner, but we did the warrior. If I think of the warrior, think of Joseph Campbell, the myth of the hero. When you do that asana and you connect to something heroic in yourself, how are you going to bring that out and live it? Sorry, I just spat. How are you going to bring that out and live it? That is your heroic, your hero or heroine journey, whatever way that manifests in you. We did the corpse, and think about ego eclipse. I'm not talking about ego death here, because you don't want to kill your ego off. You need it to function in the everyday world. Ego eclipse is a bit more of a useful way, but the corpse could be an ally to that. We did the tree, which I must admit, Stuart, I shut my eyes, but I nearly fell over, but fortunately I managed to hang on. But you think about the tree, connecting to the earth and connecting to the cosmos and being strong in the middle. And archetypally, I've seen images in alchemy of trees growing out of Christ's navel. Christ, verb your verbs. Yeah, keep verbing. And so, here's another little tip. Not only are we, every time we see the universe, we're part of the universe's expanse, but also, because body, mind, and soul, we're holistic beings. We have something called the numinous that can touch us, because the archetype carries the numinous. Now, the numinous is a fascinating proposition, because Rudolf Otto, who was a theologian, wasn't satisfied with just a Christian view of that. He went around the world to theistic, monotheistic, all sorts of polytheistic religions, shamanistic cultures, and wanted to find out what is the thing that seems to draw together people's religious and spiritual experiences. And he came up with this term, the numinous. It's a fancy word. It means numen is Latin for nod. It was the divine decree of the emperor who would say, because in Rome the emperors were gods, the emperor would just nod. And that was a numen. Now he said, well, the numinous, and it's like some kind of connection to the spirit realm. Now here's something beautiful. Because we have body, mind, and soul, that bit of divinity which is within us, when we consciously connect to the archetypes, and we have to thank Jung for this. Plato spoke about the archetypes, but Jung elaborated them in such a beautiful way. If you haven't read Jung's Red Book or commentaries on it, please have a read. I write about that in my own book. But here's the beautiful thing. The archetypes, when we touch into them, when I cut bread, when I do a yoga asana, when I show a bit of compassion to someone else, these are archetypal processes in us. Something numinous comes in. Now, Erik Erikson, who's a great psychologist, said you cannot manipulate the numinous, and you can't. And there's something beautiful about that, because you can't manipulate the spirit. You either surrender to that and you work with it. But it comes in when you're consciously connected to what you do. So there's something really magical about when you go deep and archetypal, you have this numinous potential. Now I'm going to draw this all together. Am I all right for time? Yep? 2 minutes? 5, look at that. Bonus. So, doing with depth. Let's think about that as a process now. Doing with depth. Is doing with depth within your grasp? Yes. You don't need to go off and have 19 years psychotherapy or anything like that. If you want that, it's fine. But doing with depth is in your grasp. Just think that you are more than just your habits and your everyday little niche. You're far more than that. When you cut bread, you're connecting to something ancient, something really tool use that humans have evolved for millennia. Think about that. I did that once, and my wife's here. She walked in the kitchen. I was crying my eyes out as I was cutting bread. And she said, "What's wrong?" And all I could say was, "It's the bread." And she went, "What's wrong with it?" I said, "Nothing. It's just lovely." Because I was connecting to my archetypal roots. And if you do that, it opens you up. If you realise that what you're doing with your life is phenomenal, wow. Anyone else got goosebumps? I can't even speak now. Let me know. Anyway, all right. So doing with depth is a sacrament. That's what we can say. It's a sacrament. And Heinrich Skolimowski has written a beautiful book about this. Really, I quote that again in my own book. But it's also that sacrament when we work together, can be part of a sustainable future. And this is the proposition. We need hope, we need compassion, we need altruism, we need love. Love what we do. And that's the next step, I believe. I asked you all, what do you think the next step is in terms of where we're going, the information age, beyond that? I think it's this discovering more about what we can do for ourselves and for each other spiritually and co-creatively.